live life to the fullest. I question everything. I don't pretend to be a perfectionist. And the thing is, that's just who I am.
Life itself has become somewhat of an experiment for Reg Cox. Radical life-saving surgery to remove a tumour from his spine has left Reg with the handicap of crutches, but has given him a new purpose, perspective and a greater awareness of the scenery he so loves to paint.
After such an experience, you wake up to the fact that life offers no guarantees. You cease to take anything for granted and you start to be truly thankful for what you have left.
Reg became interested in watercolour in the early 70s. He has held several successful exhibitions, been the recipient of major art awards, and examples of his work are being sought by collectors. Despite his discomfort, Reg adapts himself wherever he may be, whether on location or in the studio, and always within an easy arm's length are all his unusual assortment of tools, such as tissues, hairdryer, sprays, paints, and his Chinese fantail brushes, so essential to his particular and very personal style of watercolour creativity.
Before I'd like to do a demonstration, I'd also like to point out a few factors which help you into sort of creating a masterpiece. One is your workstation. Now, it's very important that you are comfortable with everything that's all around you. I am sitting today in a chair which has got a swivel, which means that when I want to sort of point to something or pick up something, I can sort of go with the swivel of the chair. The armrests that I have here are very important because when I actually want to sort of pick up something and to use gravity with the board, I can sort of go up and down using my elbows as levers. Now, also one of my very practical tables I have is a table that is designed by watercolourists for watercolourists. And how this works is that we have a flat plane here where we take the level that you want, make sure that it's tight on both sides so that we've got a gradient to work from. And then this two trays come out there and there, so that we then have two areas, workstation areas, where we can put our palette, for argument's sake, into there. Within that arm's length, we have the tissues, the hairdryer, the spray, plenty of clean water, some Liquitex, and it's most important that you have everything all on the side that you prefer. So if you're left-handed, put everything all on this side here. If you favour the right hand, well then you'll put everything that you have there on the other side. It's most important that you are comfortable before you even start to paint. So, and if you've got to reach out for something like that, you put a lot of strain on your whole sort of body, but that's why it's good if you've got something within an arm's length, that it's all practical. It's got to be practical before you start to be creative. I think it's good to actually have a bit of quality time, but forget about having something hanging onto your arm where it tells you how much time it took. So take your watch off, put it down, put the face about the other way, and try to sort of find half an hour each day where you want to do something for yourself. And the amount of areas I'm sort of showing you here, it doesn't take up a lot. We're here at Worrell's Country Store at Warrandyte in Victoria, and what I'm about to show you is how to use colour license to use colour, and what we're going to do is to paint wet into wet and exploding washes, and using the rainbow lorikeet as the subject matter. So here we go. So what we've achieved at the moment is that we have a drawing where I've very sort of roughly sketched in the backdrop, which is, say, the trees, the birds, and I've also haven't concentrated too much on the background or the detail, like the feathers or the eyes or the beaks of the birds, because I don't want it to be a very serious like a picture. I just want it to be a fun sort of thing where I have fun, and it gives me a license to put down colour and mood and movement with my sort of special technique. What is also important is that we have some photographs or reference that we can use, because say if it gets darker as we go along, well then what you start off with and what you end up with can be two different things. So it is important to look at some of the photographs that you may have taken before, so you can sort of go on into the night, so to speak, and keep painting, but you've still got reference to work from. So these are photographs of the backdrops, which I have here, which are the trees, which give the all-Australian sort of colours, and also certain positions that the birds have got themselves into. So I'm come up with a bit of an idea, like the title of the picture might be called Three's Company, Four's a Crowd. So all of a sudden that gives me a reason to look at the birds and the ideas I've got. So say then with these birds here, this may be the ultimate choice, where you've got three in the bath, in the bird bath or the seed bath, and one on the top of the arch there. So that gives you a bit of a reason to actually start the paint. But the positions of these birds here doesn't have to be what you see there in the photograph. It could be something like that, or it could be something like that. This is where the artistic license comes into it. So let's just sort of use a bit of compromise, but I think that's quite a good situation where we've got, you can't fit any more birds into the feeding bowl, so here's Joe Blow out here out in the cold. But they might be in, there's another position for them. We've got the Liquitex here, which is covering a bit of the tree trunk here, the birds, and I'm just going to give the paper, which is in this case here, it's a Canson paper, it's called Montvale. It's a 300 GSM, which is grams per square metre. That's the weight of it. And it's important to relate to the papers before you even do something like this. So to do a big painting like this, I've got to know something about the nature of what the paper is going to do for me, not what I can do for the paper. That's most important. So instead of using like the little small brush that I have here to cover a large area, I'm going to use a larger fantail brush, so it makes the job a bit easier. Always mix up too much and not enough. So in this case here, to help speed up the process, we put a bit of water spray in your palette. This incidentally is just, it's not a normal palette, it's just a china plate, but it's going to give me a lot of different colours. And the first things we do here, I want to kill the white of the paper, right? So again, by holding the palette with one hand and twisting it around with the other, we're able to cover quite large areas. This is the beauty of these fantail brushes. They can pick up a little trace of the pink into there, but does it really matter? Make sure that everything's all at arm's length, so that you're not stretching out and you're not trying to sort of make it harder for yourself. Remember, you want it to be a fun exercise. You don't really want to sort of be too serious about what you do, and you want to enjoy yourself, which is what art's all about. And you may see at the moment where the paper is taking in the pigment here, and where it's actually sort of crossing over into the masked area, you see how it's got the little drops of water. So we've got to be wary of that. And also by putting the piece of paper on the tilt here, we've got a gradient where the water is following gravity. So you can see it welling up into here. So we've just got to be aware of what's going on here. So at the moment I'm just giving it a background, sort of a colour representing the Australian bush. I'll bring into play a little bit of blues. So I'm playing a light colour at the moment against a dark colour. Notice how I just twist and twirl the brush. This is why I like these Fantail brushes, because you can dance with them. And also, the brush in your hand is like the brush in your hand is like in your wrist, and then your wrist dances as well, and then your arm dances. So it's like a bit of a free-flowing movement. But the Fantail brush actually makes you sort of loosen up. It's not like your whole brush is coming to a very fine sort of point. And we want to have fun. We don't want to get too serious with this painting business, because it's only a piece of paper with some colour splashed on it when it's all said and done. Darkish colour I'm putting down now will actually help to highlight the birds. And the beauty thing about painting, and particularly with painting out in a group with people, is that you can go outside and enjoy the fresh air, listen to the birds, put down a bit of colour, talk to each other, and you just sort of, it's beaut. Now the funny thing is, I discovered painting because I needed something to calm me down, to sort of to slow me down. So what I would do, I discovered painting watercolours by chance, by watching another person paint. And I thought, geez, this is interesting, because it's not toxic, there's no fumes coming off the paper, it's wet into wet, it's exploding washes, and all of a sudden it's like you get hooked onto something. It's just like an addiction. As you can see here, I've got quite a lot of colour splashed down. It looks a hell of a mess, and the paper is buckled up in the certain areas. There's still colour coming down here. But really, you've got to be in a situation where you don't care. It's only a piece of paper with some colour splashed on it. Now we're using tissues, and I'm wiping off around these areas here, because some of these dribbles like you're seeing here can be, I call this the rogue dribble, because all of a sudden that will come down, it will go straight down to here, and you might not want it to be like that, but again you still have a choice whether, see how it's just about to take off, we can stop it by taking up like that, and you haven't got the problem. At the same time, it's draining from here, it's coming all the way down to here. Okay, so we've got some form of colour all happening to here. I've wiped off quite a lot of excess colour that I don't want. Now I'm going to come in here with the trowel. This is a spatula which is meant for oil painting, but I've adapted it so that while the paint and the paper is still moist, I could then get the spatula and I can then sort of form things like another branch, okay? And what it's actually doing, it's splaying out the colour so that it's going each way, but it's giving me like a silhouette in appearance. And I can get it down to a fine point like that, right up to a thick point like that by using the flat of the spatula. I can chatter it like that, and it's giving me texture as well as sort of form. Out of failure, or you not being happy with your work, comes success, because you're able to formulate something after a long given time. As I say, this idea here is taking me 30 years to perfect, and I'm still in a learning curve. But the beauty thing is you're putting down colour, you're enjoying what you're doing. It doesn't have to be exact, like in say a wildlife illustration or anything like that. What I'm doing now is I'm giving a light spray, and I can actually sort of get another texture by putting the spray down there. There's the hot air coming out of here, and just by doing that, sometimes you can lift up a bit more of the colour, so you're getting another form of texture. Another thing which is important is that when you're doing a demonstration like this, the birds don't necessarily have to sit on the rail and pose for you for a whole hour. So what you've got to do is to get a feeling for the area and soak it all in. Go and have a cup of coffee, look at the birds, have a good close-up look at the colours and things like that. The birds will go away, but they'll come back to you. But don't just rush into it, just sort of take your time. I think it's nearly dry. We just sort of use your hand like that, just to sort of feel if it's still wet or moist. If it's dry like that, now's the time to actually sort of get the Liquitex off. The lead pencil is already embedded into the surface of the paper. So what we do now, instead of actually getting the Liquitex off with your finger, which gets sort of quite hot, what I've done is devise a little trick, and that is to use some masking tape, scrunched up like that, and get the sticky off it, and use that as a way of getting the Liquitex off. Now, what will happen now, I'll just sort of make sure I've got most of the sticky off with my fingers like that, and then by doing this, you see how it's coming off. If you use your fingers get quite hot. So now what I'm doing now is getting a nice white clean edge, and the white of the paper is starting to come through. Again, see? Pull away with your hand if you like. What I find interesting about the watercolour, it can be your best friend one minute, and it can be your world's worst enemy the next. But the thing is, a good watercolourist becomes more of an observer of their own madness or their own techniques rather than becoming the master and they know everything about everything. They know everything about nothing. But the thing about the watercolour is it tricks you all the time. But just when you think you got it right, you trip up. Here we go. These fantail brushes are good because they don't come to a point. They can get onto a point like that, or it can be flat like that. So they're quite versatile. And when you're actually using the palette, can you see how I'm picking up little bits of colour, mixing it round? You try doing that with a pointy brush, or a brush that comes to a point. Just trying to illustrate the feeling of sort of bark peeling off, and also a bit of dark into here which will silhouette the bird a bit. These are little connecting branches which will actually help the composition, because your eye will go in and out of the composition via these little branches. So your eye doesn't seem to stop in one spot. And I don't want it to be like a traditional realist sort of painting. I just want it to be a mixture of fun, without getting too serious about how many feathers are on the bird or if I got the anatomy right. It's virtually a fusion of colour, plus your own sort of style. Now, the base of where the birds are sitting on, it's made out of terracotta, which is like a lightish sort of a brown, reddish brown. So that's important because you need to have to show something where as a base. So the birds are sitting on something like that. Instead of using straight colour, we'll just model that in with a bit of water. Now, even if you see little spots of brown where it's gone onto the body of the bird, don't worry about it. You can't afford to worry about something like that at the moment. If you do, just wipe it off. So what's happening, I'm creating a backdrop here for my actors, which are my birds, to sort of bounce off. And you can see the warmth in the trunk of the tree is nice because you've got this warmth in here. This will be a nice contrast for the greens and the vivid oranges and the yellows and the reds of the birds. So what I've got to do now is to say, look at the photographs of the birds. Don't rely too much on the actual what you see in the photograph here. Try to look at the birds having a base colour, which is say a yellow and a green. So what we're looking at now is say a yellow, maybe a bit of green, and very, very lightly a light wash, put that over the bird. And you can see immediately how strong that green is there to the background colour. These parrots are very, very vivid. Now, one of the things now what I'm trying to do is to key in all the bright colours of the birds, and this is probably the most difficult part of the exercise, where I've got to sort of make it look fun and look authentic, and try not to get carried away with the anatomy of the bird. With the little spatula, and while it's sort of wet into here, I'm able to do sort of sculpture to a certain degree, the shine of the feathers particularly on the heads of the birds. Be wary of the fact that it doesn't have to be a painting like the Mona Lisa. It's a fun painting, it's for what you wanted to do. And when you get round to that way of thinking, that's when you really enjoy the art of watercolour. And don't get too serious about what you do, just have a bit of fun with it. If you are in doubt, ask somebody for their opinion. Just show it to them at random. And sometimes the first things that people say are probably the most honest. I'm quite happy with what I've done so far, because really you it's, as I said before, it's a fun thing to code the birds into the backdrop, to put the colour down, to use the Fantails brush. There's a lot of things that are all going on in your mind. Okay, so at this stage I'm going to sort of put a little bit of red in for the beaks. Another thing too, which is most important, is that you can always leave it to another day. If you're getting really tired, you can always leave it to another day and come back to it, because your eyes do get very tired of all the decision making, and come back to, instead of messing it up, come back to it when you want to another day, because the colours are set, they're in there to stay. So another thing too, don't rush it. You've got to find out, there's a division between enjoying yourself and trying too hard to impress other people, trying too hard to paint a picture. So you've got to work out a compromise, what you want to do. And one of the beautiful things about living in Australia is that you have these birds and you have the colour and everything all around you, but we don't really appreciate it. It's just there. If you go to another country, you'll probably might sort of see that. Into here, just to finish up the exercise, we use that, while this is still wet and moist into here, we're using the spatula just to dig away some of the excess colour which is still a bit moist, and that gives you a nice sort of a highlight or the sheen of the feathers like I'm doing here. You tend to find that you sort of, the excitement of putting down the colour, the birds, the subject matter, everything all sort of comes to a rush, and then you're the one who's got to decide when to sort of be happy with what you've done. It's good just to be able to say, yes, I am happy with it. Be pleased with what you've done and learn how to walk away from something and be open to other people's criticism. But the main thing is that you've done the painting, and the thing is you're learning all the time as you go along. It becomes the end of a perfect day. If you wanted to find out as a student that French ultramarine blue and yellow ochre made a nice green, I would then refer you on to a book called Colour Mixing. But I honestly think that the people who want to be influenced by me or whatever, they're in it for a quick fix of information. They don't want to be messed around. They don't want to be talked down to. They just want to watch what you do. They want to look over your shoulder and be a participant in your madness, or what I call a creative madness. I've found it very interesting that I ask people, what do they want out of me? And the majority of people will come up to me and they'll say, we just want to watch. What I'm going to introduce here is that we have 3 sheets of the paper, a paper that you've chosen because you like the materials or you like the fabric. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to sort of get the fantail brush and go across the 3 surfaces at the same time. Why I think this is important is that you don't get too conscious of working on a one-to-one sort of basis. You're working on 3 different images at the same time. And this is learning to let go and learn to free up. So let's get to it. So the first thing I'll do is I will wet the paper, say maybe half the paper, the area between here and here, on the 3 sheets. So we wet this by using a spray atomizer and having this another piece of white paper here as a shield, so that we're going to go from wet into wet and wet into dry on this side here. Okay, so if you have a quick glance of what's happening here, we've actually atomized the water, so we've got a fine sort of structure of spray into here. Added to this now, we then get a bit of red and say a little bit of neutral tint for a contrast. So you can see on the brush here we have a red on one end of the spectrum and a sort of a bluey black on the other end. Now with one sweep of the brush I'm not going to stop in one given area. I'm just going to go right across the whole three images at the same time and twist the brush as well. Back the other way. You may be able to pick up that all of a sudden we've had two brush strokes going from left to right and right to left. In that we've got so many different little things all happening is that we've got to act very fast. So you see how the gravity is forming and it's sort of coming down to here. Now what I can do is to say feather out some of these little images by getting some clean water on the brush and just tipping it. Just doing a little bit more slowly. And you'll see how it just changes once more. Brush in the clean water and do the procedure again but going from left to right. Skipping over the top of the masking tape. And you can probably see now that particularly in the middle one here how we have a lot more of the colour sort of forming a pattern coming into here and then stopping right into here. This is where there's the evidence of gravity. More so in this one than the other two. But if we want to actually find that's a bit of an annoyance, what we can do is get a tissue, just mop it up slightly, clean up around the edges on the masking tape so that you don't get these what I call rogue dribbles coming down. One point I'm trying to make here is that you'll find that each of these surfaces that we're working on are taking on a different sort of a feeling. This has got a bit more vibrancy into it. This is maybe a little bit more different, and this one here is weaker in the strength of the colour, but still got that nice subtleness into it. Now when we've got down to this middle area into here, we're now going to be working on a wet into dry surface. So load up the brush once more with a bit of dark colour. Maybe we'll load it up right up altogether. What I'm going to do now is to give a feeling of, say, hills or just a mood, but something that's definite and strong. So here we go. Now what can be quite evident here is that we're going from wet into here. As it's reaching the middle sheet here, we're starting to get a dry brush effect, as it's quite evident into here. As we go across into here, I've twisted the brush ever so slightly, and we've got a feeling of just as though there's a little flutter of just colour. But each image at the moment is taking on just a feeling. I don't know how to explain it anymore. They're just taking on a feeling as though there's movement. In other words, the brush is dancing for me. Okay, now what I've done now is I've cleaned the brush out, maybe a little bit of water on the brush, and I'm just going to let this model in to the dry area and see what's going to happen. One thing that I haven't done here is I haven't laid any pencil lines down or any structure, because I just want to have a relationship between myself and a piece of paper without being confined to sort of drawing something into sections. Again, I might come back in with a bit more dark. And instead of going from right to left, I'll go from left to right. So the brush is loaded up with some very dark colour, and might do a little bit more quickly this time. Again, as you venture into these little exercises, you start to sort of find that you're losing a bit of your how would you call it, insecurity, and you're starting to enjoy yourself. But you'll go up and down with all this emotion. But the good thing about the painting is that it's just something that's just, there's no toxic fumes coming off the paper, for argument's sake. It's just something where you're showing expression in a very short time. You don't know what you're going to get at the end result. But the beauty thing about the watercolour is that all these little things that are happening into here, they're not planned, it's just happening. So you become an observer of these techniques rather than the master. In such a short time, it's just a good feeling, so you can learn to let go of something. And nobody teaches you these things. What you've got to do is to come across these things by accident. And when you look at the surface of what we have here, you're looking at this sort of shape that we have here in the form of a square. So what you're going to do is that you're going to have 3 squares that you're working into. If we decide that we want to sort of have another choice, we have 12 shapes. In other words, if we put this upside down like we have here, we have another area. If we tip it up this way like that, that's another viewing area to look at. And how we're going to sort of determine this is looking at through a piece of mat board which has been cut out in the form of a square, and we drop this down onto it like there, or onto it like there, and this way you're able to isolate your eye away from that, from the other 2 shapes, and then you're able to see something within the shape. Don't ask me what it is, but it doesn't matter. It's just that you're playing around with colour and just ideas in a very short time. Try not to get too serious with this type of painting, because remember, they're only little things that we're experimenting with. We're learning to understand what the watercolour's on about. And we're not trying to paint a masterpiece. We're just trying to enjoy ourselves. I'm going to spray this little area down here with a bit of water, not too much, just a little bit of water. And you may notice that by putting a bit of water onto this dry area here, you may notice how it's just sort of flared up, and it's giving me this lovely feeling as though it's got a mottled look. How many times you do that is up to your discretion. Now, if I want to get another little sort of technique into here, a couple of tissues, very lightly with your hand, press it down, and you'll find that we might get some form of a feeling for smoke. It could be a cloud. Doesn't matter, it's just that we're experimenting and we're playing around with the different ideas. Okay, now what's happening now is we're getting a 3-dimensional sort of look. There's something it looks like it's a volcano, it looks like it's lava coming down. But whatever's happening, everything's all moving once more. Let's put, if we want to make it look like lava, let's put a bit more red into it. Get into some form of a habit too, like if you see the little areas there on the masking tape which is filling up with a bit of pigment, just clean those off. It's good, best to get into a bit of a habit here. Now I've been working on a bit of a gradient sort of coming down here, but what I can do is reverse the paper so it's coming back the other way, okay? Now, with a bit of spray, not too much and not too close up, but just let it fall like it's sort of a drizzle, like a rain, and just bring it down. How many times you do this is basically up to you. You just got to let the watercolour work it out for itself, and you become an observer rather than the artist. And just wait until it tells you what it's going to do. If you want to, tilt the board just slightly, rock it from one side to the other. Our discipline is that we've got to work from light tones, which we see into here, from light tones into dark tones. Now, I also like to be dictated to a bit by time. So in this situation here, I want to do something within, say, 20 minutes. And I don't want it to go beyond that, because when you go beyond, say, 20 minutes, you start to get a bit too keyed up and a bit too tense. And then you lose the freshness of what you're trying to say. So again, these brushes, if we just sort of twist and turn it like so, you make gain from 3 images across. We're trying to, and I'm also working upside down as well. So when you're working upside down, you're working on another level of consciousness, but you're not. Again, it's quite exciting, because when you turn it back the other way, you weren't prepared to do that, but then all of a sudden it looks good. And when it comes back to what we have here, we might finish this little exercise off with, say, coming back to the dark colour, a little tip of colour onto the edge of the brush. We might have a suggestion of trees. Now these little images here are starting to give me a suggestion of a raging fire going through the bush. These areas that we have here are the tops of the trees. This area into here could be a feeling for a flame. The pigments are trying to fuse into the surface of the paper. In this case, it's a it's a Montvale watercolour paper, which is 100% cellulose fibre paper. And what it's doing is that it's absorbing the colour more readily into the surface than, say, what a cotton paper might do. But the thing is, there's things happening all the time. If we wanted to use another instrument in our bag of tricks, we could use a little spatula. Now the spatula is meant for oil painting, but let's say, look at the surface here where we've got a white piece of paper. I know it's a heavy duty sort of paper, it's a 300 GSM, and just with the flat of the spatula we're able to get the suggestion of, say, perhaps rocks or tone. But don't just do it under one area, just do a little bit onto the three. So it's not just the fantail brush, the gravity. We're trying to get as many different effects as we can in a short time. Now, what we can do to fast forward this is to use the hairdryer, and the hairdryer is just as an important instrument as the fantail brush, because by just putting it on and moving the colours around with the hot air sort of hitting into here, we're actually sort of welding the colours into the surface, evaporating the water from the surface and pushing the colours further in at the same time. So this is quite exciting. Now, added to this, if you're careful enough, what you can do without putting any of the spray out of here into here, and you is to just sort of model that in a bit of water. Keep it away from the intake of the hot air, and we're able to get another effect. It's becoming more speckled, you might say. This is what we call scanning, where we're trying to evenly dry out the three pieces of paper at the same time. Now, this masking tape is actually doing its job, because what we've done here is that we've put the masking tape on so that it covers say half of the paper onto the half of the backing board, and we've got that right down the rib of the paper here and here, and along the edge here we've got the masking tape as well, so that it's holding down flat onto the piece of board, and this is what's helping us. But you also might be able to see where the buckle of the paper is. Now, by actually drying this out with the hairdryer, you're able to sort of, on the ribs of the paper here, you're able to flatten it out more quickly than, say, perhaps sort of putting it out in the sun to let it dry naturally. But to finish up, what I'd like to do is to sort of show you an end result. This has now taken up to about, say, 20 minutes to get this point. But by isolating your eye and, say, picking out one of the images, what you're able to do with this, with the mat board, with the cutout into here, is to look at what you've done, where you can actually say, yes, I did that. There's something in it where you've got a feeling of perhaps the fire, say trees or mood, but what we're presenting here is a feeling of texture, variations in colour, mood, but a feeling that there's something there. You don't know what it is, but you like it. And that's basically, you're the only person that you've got to please, yourself and nobody else. So when we run this piece of board across from this image, which is the middle one, we then are able to identify perhaps the paper, if you're looking at it for demonstration purposes. In this case, it's the Montvale watercolour paper, 300 GSM. Then we take it across over to this paper over here, and you'll see that the white area that we've got here presents us with another image which is so different to the first one. And what happens with these little exercises is that when you get up and walk away from it and you come back to it at say 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour or whatever, you're able to see something in it which you didn't see before. In other words, we can come out with a pencil and start to draw in something. These could be trees. This could be a feeling as though there's sort of a smoke. But it doesn't have to be anything in particular. And from these little test strips that we see here, you're able to actually sort of learn to let go. If you were working on a one-to-one basis like we're doing here, I doubt if anybody would end up with a result like that, because you would get too conscious of failing. By working on 3 images at the same time, we're having fun, and one of these 3 images that we have here might be a little masterpiece, but you're not. But what's happened is you painted on a subconscious level rather than 2 tenths, and this is the enjoyment of the watercolour. In my paintings, I don't want the viewer to know where something starts or where something finishes. I want the viewer to actually come into my world from all different angles. And I'm always inventing things so that it makes my work stand out. This may be a little bit more different from the other fellow artists. Maybe that's the inventiveness in me. Maybe I get bored with what I do. But I don't like to conform to regularity. In other words, I don't really want to paint to the means of the golden rectangle all the time, which the golden rectangle is the perfect shape. So what I do is I accept that that's the perfect shape according to the law of averages, but I don't have to conform. Okay, for our last demonstration, what I'd like to do today is to do a demonstration, a quick demonstration of a still life using fish. The reason why I've chosen fish is that the fish comes in all different structures, where we've got colour, we've got the licence to use different colour, and at the end of the day, if the demonstration is to our satisfaction, we'll have a good reason to actually cook the fish and eat them and have that as a just reward. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do now is to put down some, to get a feeling of the side of the fish, we're going to put down a little bit of metallic silver. So here we go. And I've wet the paper a little bit with the spray atomizer, so that it's going to be called wet into wet and exploding washes. And I've got to sort of just get the side of the fish clean the brush and using a bit of gravity and a bit of clean water, just get that silver to thin out a bit. So this, incidentally, our first fish that we have here is called a jack mackerel, and they've been recently purchased from the fishmongers. I've chosen a fresh fish that'll have a bit of colour and a bit of life in it. So the next fish that we have coming down is a little garfish. The garfish is a little bit thinner in shape, and it's got a nice streamlined body, and at the end of it it's got like a beak, which acts as a spear. The colour blue that I'm using at the moment is a mixture of cerulean, a little bit of Prussian, a little bit of French ultramarine. It all gets blended into this brush, and as you twist and turn it, it all turns into all different types of blues, of which probably hasn't got a name for it. don't feel as though you've got to paint exactly what you see in front of you. This is probably one of the hardest things, is to people feel obliged that they've got to paint exactly what's there in front of them. There's none of that. You don't need to do any of that. And put our first colours down for the prawns, working out from lights to darks. This stage I've put a little bit of red, a little bit of copper, which is a metallic colour, and again, it doesn't have to be accurate as to what the colours are on the picture. It doesn't matter. This one, the prawn in the middle, you can make that a prawn that hasn't been cooked. This one here could be cooked. This one here could be a tiger prawn. This one here could be a king prawn. It doesn't matter. We've got the luxury of being able to make up our mind as we're going along. I think what is most important is that you've got to learn to let go. You've got to learn to sort of just have fun with the medium. Just do it because you want to paint, and throw caution to the wind. The key part of the prawns perhaps is the black eyes, like as in the fish, because that's when you find that there's a starting point, and then as you come round you start to see the tail. Nobody's going to count how many legs the prawn's got or whatever. But you see how the fantail brush can actually sort of be put onto the edge, and then you can go from something like being a big area like that to very fine. So these fantail brushes, once you get a bit of practice up, they really can sort of be quite fun to paint with. Why I'm probably painting these prawns in all different colours is that if each prawn is the same, you don't know which prawn to look at first. So let's just use some of the colour we've got in the palette and have a bit of fun with them, with the different colours, and make it a little bit more enticing. And even though I've been painting for something like 30 years, I'm still quite fascinated by what I'm able to do with my next painting. I just find that the watercolour just enhances your life, because you don't actually sort of master the medium, so to speak, but you learn how to become more an observer of all these little tricks of the trade. And if it doesn't work out, you've got to work on a bit of a theory that if you don't really like the painting or hasn't worked out to what you wanted, it's only a piece of paper with some colour splashed on it. So work out what you don't like about it, put it up against the wall, and then perhaps sort of, use the painting that you're not happy with as an example, and try to improve it by looking at what you didn't like in the first place. Now if we want to drain off some of the colour that we have here, perhaps with a tissue, putting the colour down in bulk like I have here, it means that you've actually got to, you activate the paper and you've got to start to do something with it. Come back in with a spatula. Perhaps start to look at the shape of the prawn. Now while this is wet, it's still pliable with our little bit of metal we have here, and this will give us the sheen of the shape of the prawn, but without actually having to go back and using the fantail brush. And I'm trying to give it more of a three-dimensional form. All of a sudden they start to become a blob of paint, and then they start to have structure into them. That's what I tell my students. You haven't got all day to do something in. I'm only going to give you an hour, 3/4 of an hour to do something in, because the more time that you've got to sit there and wonder, now what do I do next, the quicker you lose the plot and your confidence as well. Next part I'll do is just say block in the lemon, which is our tantalising part. It's a fruit which will sort of help to enhance the texture of the fish when you cook it. But all it's to do, it's suggesting that things are there. So we don't have to, again, know the exact colour, and introducing the lemon means that you're going to introduce a bright colour like yellow, which will help to focus in on the whole image. And yellow is always a happy, bright colour. So that's the reason why I'm using the slices of the lemon. But instead of showing a whole complete lemon, which will compete with the fish, we're just showing you two, say, little medallions of lemon. And the whole exercise is on a bed of lettuce. This, as I said before, if we feel as though the whole thing's becoming a bit too mechanical, a bit too sort of sectionised, maybe a little bit of water, and then we just spray it, and that will help to make it the colours a bit more fluent. As you can see in here, they're starting to run, which helps me. Because once I feel as though the painting is starting to become a love of labour, I start to lose a bit more interest in it. So we're now using what we call the wet into wet technique, where we've just given the paper a refreshing little bit of spray of water, and it helps, as you can probably see here, how it just sort of, and by using gravity in the form of tilting the board up and down, you can see how I've got more control as well. So on one hand I'm using the fantail brush, on the other hand I'm able to tilt the board up and down so that I've got complete control. I'm in control, but I'm out of control, so to speak. Now what I'll do is that instead of reaching right up over here with my hand and making it a bit more sort of a task, I'll bring the board around so that I don't make it as hard on myself, and that really means that I've got a much more easier way of approaching this area with our colour. A lot of people become very afraid of this huge amount of white space and they don't know what to do with it. So you just got to learn to look for checks and balances, what I call. And this colour that I've put down, even though it's not the shape of the lettuce which we have in our still life, all I'm doing is interpreting this into an artistic license. And if I want to get a situation where it looks like lettuce or it looks like movement, we then get our spatula out and then we sort of are able to make a bit of movement as though we're creating instant texture. So the fish is still like still in the water, so to speak. As I said before, I'm working upside down because of the convenience of being able to get to this area without sort of going right over the top. And working upside down on an area this size, all of a sudden I can tuck in a bit of lettuce like I've just done into there and disguise a bit of the fish and make it look as though it's come alive a bit more. And because when we bring it back up on the right way up, you'll be able to see just what I'm doing. But sometimes if you are working upside down, you're not too conscious of what I call trying to be too honest to the actual subject matter. Okay, now I'll take it back the other way and maybe it's time to analyse what we're trying to look at. The lemon here could have a bit more colour, being in the sort of shape of a circle. We make that come alive and make intersections. Behind here I might make that a little bit more darker in green and make that kick out a bit. While this is still wet and it's pliable on our paper, we're able to do marks. As soon as it's dry, we won't be able to do that. Just using a bit of olive green here to enhance the colour of the lemon. Don't have to use the olive green everywhere, just in certain little pockets. Boy, oh boy, you've got to get these colours down quickly because the fish, even though they're quite sort of a challenge to draw, they do pong after a while. And that's, say, one good thing about the watercolour. You can get this wet in the wet and hurry up sort of thing. Now, can you see here how I've actually sort of got a bit more definition for the lemon, also in the prawn. think what we might go for now is perhaps put the prawns have a little bit of a dark eye. Whoops. Perhaps if we put the eyes in. Now the whole secret really in something like this is knowing just when to stop and walk away and leave it alone. Now only you will be able to sort of work that out for yourself. I'm only a demonstrator, I'm giving you ideas, I'm trying to sort of make it a fun picture, a fun exercise, as well as sort of making it as though it could be a work of art. But the main thing is to have fun with the medium, to get out multiple bits of colour and just basically just get a richness into the picture. And away from the underside of the fish, and you'll see how you've got a bit more definition into here. Also at the same time the fantail brush is quite good because we could then take a bit of the colour that we have here and perhaps give a suggestion of the ribs of the fish, of the garfish. Only with the fantail brush would you get something like this. Because in the sides of the fish it's got very, very fine bones in the rib cage. Now how on earth do you show all of that? It's a bit of a decision for the artist. So I've come up with this answer into here. A bit more of a drop shadow. It will come down for the underside of the jack mackerel. And of course the other thing too, when you're working close up like this, it's very, very hard to know if it's working out or if it's not. So sometimes it does pay people to actually step back from their work for say 30 seconds and try to analyse things from a distance, because you are working at very close range here. And I don't want to get too serious with what the subject matter is. I just want to have fun with the whole medium. But a lot of people don't like to play it this way, so all I can do is offer you suggestions as to how I might sort of want to paint. But what you'll do in this video is you'll only take out of me what you need to know, you'll interpret your way, and this is the purpose of the exercise, is to show you how I do something my way, and that's where we've got to sort of leave the situation at. The good thing about a video is that you can actually stop it if you want to pick up a point which I'm making, freeze frame it and then think about it. Now this, as I said before, is the eye of the fish. Another thing which is important is not to get caught up in what you see on your platter and what you're trying to do with your painting. Because once you feel as though you've got to paint everything that's there on that platter, you've got problems. You can't paint everything you see on that platter. So even just using the tip of the spatula, you see how I'm getting definition. I'm sort of bringing in the eye, the gills, the fin, and you're getting like the fish is coming alive again. In goes its mouth. This is giving a bit of texture while it's still a bit wet. The sheen. I'm doing this while I've got a bit more, while it's got a bit of moisture left on the paper, which means I've got room to play with the spatula. Because in the world where we're all full of computers and things, we're all dominated by a TV screen. This is where we reverse the procedure and say, look, I'm going to paint something with my own hand and my brain. I want to do something. And watercolour probably is one of the most ancient forms of communication. It's been around for a long time. It's therapy. At this stage, I would say I'm about 7/8 of the exercise through. I'm quite happy about what's happened, and sometimes you're better off to leave a painting understated than perhaps overstated, because people like to feel as though there's something there left to be said, and it's a fun picture. It's just it's something where it's a personal thing, but only you can tell when to sort of stop painting. With a few strokes of the Conte crayon and a bit more into here, this is our end result. And the good part about this demonstration is now I get to eat the subject matter, which is the fish. So, bon appetit, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. You could live to be 101 and still paint pictures.